Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Writing Visual Studio Extensions with Matt. That's me. And the question today is who do we have with us? Do we have John? Is he back? Or is James back from his was it training he did for a month or so? Who do we have? Who do we have with us today? John, James, who is it?
It's me.
Yes,
James. I tried to fool everybody in the chat by saying it was John, but it's not. It's James. It's me.
Oh, nice.
The hair is a little bit longer, as you can see. It's coming in full. I have new artwork.
Ooh.
My wife got me that for Christmas. We framed it. She painted the frame yellow because you can't really buy a yellow frame. But how cool is that? She spray painted it yellow. It's a Mario Kart, like kind of toads on there, kind of doing stuff. That's cool.
Very sweet.
Yeah. My monkeys over here are now playing board games. They're playing pinball and pole position. So
wow, a lot of things happened. And how long were you gone? A month and a half? A month?
It's been about a month, or so. Yeah, it's been a month and a half. I don't even know. It's been over a month, at least a month at minimum. So, and you were gone last week, but now you're back.
Yes.
So,
well, because I was last week. I was kind of thinking about something, and then I went ahead and did it. And so I didn't do a show last week, and it kind of culminates today. So it's like almost like the preparation of two shows in one.
Okay. I like that. Yeah. I do have to give you a shout out too, because today I live streamed earlier today. If anyone was in the chat, it's on my live stream earlier. We were checking out .NET 6 Preview 2 and .NET MAUI Preview 1. And I was updating their samples, and there was an SVG in the project. And someone said, wouldn't it be great if you could preview SVGs inside of Visual Studio? And I said, let me just type in the word MADS into that's how I just MADS into the extensions. And there was an SVG previewer. And like you could click on the SVG, it would open it up and it would show you a real-time preview, which I thought was cool. But I do have a feature request, which is to hover over the SVG and have it pop up like it does a PNG or a JPEG.
Okay.
That would be the next. That's not for today, but that's just add it to your bucket of feature requests that James asks for on a day-to-day basis. However, I will say this, if you're working with SVGs, the SVG plugin is amazing. But then you also shared another plugin recently, and I couldn't find it, but it's like to make the solution window stuff bigger.
Oh, yeah.
Like a presenter mode thing. What's that one?
That one is called Font Sizer.
Font Sizer.
So it's actually not mine. I forgot to share my screen. Can you believe it?
Classic.
Font Sizer is an extension that I didn't write. And so if we go to Marketplace, but what I did do, I updated it. So if we go to Font Sizer, we can see there is a 2.0. So that's mine. There used to be Font Sizer, but it got pulled down by whoever wrote it originally. So you can see here's a fork of the Font Sizer extension.
Ah, cool.
Yeah. And so you don't see here, but there's actually keyboard shortcuts. So you can so here's what it looks like. What was it? It was control and then numpad something. Shift plus. See here how.
Interesting. So you just make the whole window bigger. Every font.
That's all the environment fonts. If I had a file open, let's just open a random file here. Why not this one? So I could open like Control Plus, just makes the editor larger. But it's not just the editor. It's also, let's hover over something. You see these things are bigger too.
Oh, that is nice.
Do we get intelligence for any of this? Maybe not. So all the different things in the editor is bigger, not just the text itself. But you can see here the tooltip is actually equally sized up.
It's kind of like an accessibility zoom. It's kind of like you're zooming. I mean, it's all the fonts, but it's sort of global, not just a font thing.
I'd say so. And then Control Shift Plus does that for the environment. So now I have larger. You see here how big the context menu is, right?
It's good for presenting, though.
Exactly.
Yeah. Exactly. I find myself, using zoom it all the time and zooming in, but sometimes things are still small, even if I zoom in 200%, it's just like, anyways, I just want to give you shout outs because in exploring of the world of Mads's extensions is always fun. This is just a fun story before you get into it, because we're just in a meeting randomly and someone's like, wouldn't it be great if you could do this thing? And then Mad's like, here's the thing that I built, and here's the thing that I updated. And then today I was like, oh, what about SVGs? Of course you made one. So I was just good shout out that, in my normal development, I'm finding more and more. And everyone in this room was like, holy cram, this is amazing. So
well, thank you, James. I appreciate it.
Yeah. All right. Now I'm going to go away. Bye-bye.
Don't go too far. Okay. So everybody, today's show is a little bit different because normally we build an extension. And we build an extension, or we build part of an extension. And today is a little bit different because, James, it's story time. Let's see if you remember what that means. Let's see. Oh, you do. Thank you. So, when we're writing extensions, here's my thinking. And it's actually some ideas I've had for years. And they're not new. But I feel like there's some issues with writing extensions that we as a community might be able to solve. And, some of the issues are, it can be hard to get started. And, because of various different things. But one of the things is that, the template that we got are kind of verbose and complex. They're not following best practices. They're not easy to see what the next step should be, right? Then there's discoverability. Like, how do you figure out what are the different things in Visual Studio? How do I extend something? How do I listen to certain events that happen so I can perform an action? Like, if you don't know where to look, you don't know where to look, and you can't find them, right? So then there's like, okay, well, how do you do best practices once you then figure out what to do? What is the right way to extend something? Like, should I go to the main thread? Should I be on the background thread? That's always that's a classic, right? Like figuring that part out. But also, like, should I use the DTE, or should I use a service, or should I use like a MEF component? Well, what is the right way of doing things? Sometimes there's more than one way of doing it. So which one is right? Well, if you don't know, you don't know, right? It's all tribal knowledge, and so it's hidden. Then on top of that is like, well, we have, for each new version of Visual Studio that comes out, not the updates, but the major versions, like 2017, then 2019, and so on. There are some breaking changes sometimes. So that can be kind of frustrating, and then you have to change your code base based on those changes, right? To accommodate those backwards incompatibilities. They're actually really good at limiting the backwards incompatibilities. That's a huge tenet of the extensibility team, to make sure that we are as backwards compat as possible. But you can't just always do it, right? Sometimes things break, but we try to be really good about it. But it does happen. Or there are just some things that behave a little bit differently between the versions. And so now you need to have like different code paths, right, in your code to adhere to those differences if you target multiple versions of VS from the same extension. Okay, so, and then there's like, some of the APIs are really verbose, right? They bleed sort of the old legacy APIs, like back from COM interfaces and all that sort of stuff. They don't look like a modern .NET API. And so that's kind of hard to deal with. And I personally don't even know how all this sort of stuff works, right? All this sort of the native legacy that kind of is bleeding through sometimes. So I think we as a community can actually do something about this. And so story time's over. I'm putting down the pipe. Thank you, James. And so, well, how do I start this? So I thought, okay, why don't I start to see if I can come up with something that we can work on together as a community that is not specifically meant for new extension developers to use. It's meant for everybody to use that writes extensions. If you're like me, you have a bunch of methods that you use over and over again. So why not consolidate them into a single NuGet package, right? So we don't have to reinvent the wheel. And also, how do we know that we wrote the best version of that method, right? the combined wisdom of the community would be better suited for this. So that's definitely something. So I've started a project, and I'm going to show you that. I've also updated and added some new templates. So let's check out my screen here. I'm going to just create a new project, and I'm going to just do the regular V6 project from that we all know and love. So V6 project, and we're just going to create it with the default name here, just to see what does it look like today. So today, I get a couple of NuGet packages. I get a package class that is full of comments. Doesn't actually do anything, but it has more comments than it has code, and it has regions, and it has some, yeah. So that's not so pretty, but it's okay. And if we look at the V6 manifest, we got a few things here. We got dependencies in here, which is completely useless, but it doesn't harm anyone. But it's not as clean as it could be. Okay, so let's add a command. I'm going to add new item, and I'm going to add a command. We're just going to call it command 1, just default name. Now this is one of those templates that adds a lot of different things, right? So let's see here. What did it add? It adds some. Let's see here. Zoom in. So it adds some pictures, one image with different icons inside of it. It added the command class, and it added a VSCT file. Okay, so let's start with the command class, which opens up here. Now, this is a long class full of comments again, and a lot of boilerplate that if you've seen this show before, you know that I just delete all this and kind of re-implement it like from the beginning. So this is a kind of a little bit of a mess, I think. And if we look at the VSCT file, we kind of we're in the same boat here. We have a lot of comments. No one reads this. And then we do this thing where we include bitmaps that we then import and separate out here. And for our buttons, we then use those bitmaps right up here. And so that's the way we've been using, we've been putting like images next to commands or buttons up in the toolbar and in the menus, right? For many versions of Visual Studio. But in the past 3 versions of Visual Studio, we've had known monikers and image monikers. And so this is kind of an outdated way of doing this. And we should be using monikers instead. And so it's nice that this command actually hooks things up correctly for us. It adds stuff like the right attributes, like this attribute right here. And it does call to initialize our newly created command 1 right here in the package class. So some nice to have magic happens, which is good. Okay, but it's definitely not sort of a streamlined experience. All right, so let's just rethink this. So I'm going to create a new project, and this time I'm going to create a project called where is it? V6 project. Oh, did I not get the latest? Oh no. Hang on. I thought I got an update. I didn't. So that's a good way to say, hey, go get the extensibility template pack. So where is the extensibility template pack? I have it here. And it is, oh, that's not what I wanted. The extensibility template pack is kind of something that I would like to see. It's based on some stories that I did while I was working on the extensibility team. They haven't gotten around to it yet. And so if you're on YouTube, there's in the description below, there's a link to an extensibility developer community extensibility ticket. Let's see here. See if I can find it. Here we go. And it would be really good if we can get some votes for it. So if you're watching this video, follow that link, and I'll talk more about it here in a second. We need to install this. Sorry, everybody. I should, of course, have run this update before we started the show here. But the idea is that this is a template pack with item templates and project templates that we as a community can contribute to together to make this better, right? And then hopefully we can nudge the extensibility team to kind of integrate that somehow into Visual Studio itself. I think that would be kind of nice. James, do they do that over at like you were on the Xamarin and .NET? I don't know if they have like similar things where they with open community projects like that.
Yeah, there's the templates. I don't think are open source. I know there's some in the world of .NET that are open source. It's a little bit tricky. I know they're really rethinking that strategy, Tim Hewer and stuff, figuring out like how to best work with that. But that being said, yeah, I think that there's definitely some advantage to working through and learning openly together. Because I think some little nice things such as adding items and things that people are doing a lot of people have written their own, ones. So I know a lot of templates I wrote for Xamarin back in the day, like I just ended up doing a pull request of the official repo, internal, private repo. And I was like, okay, like let's bring it back in. So it's like a vetting, process, but yeah.
Right. Okay. So here I have two new project templates. I have the V6 project and empty V6 project. And in parentheses, it says VS SDK helpers. We'll get back to exactly what that means, but these are new project templates that are in that project. So we're just going to go with the default name here. And I just want to show you the contrast of the thinking that I've had around this, right? And it could be that, hey, you disagree with the direction or whatever, and that's fine. I would love to hear if you think it's wrong. But let's see, here's one difference. So first of all, we have an icon because we can't have an extension that doesn't have an icon, right? And it kind of annoys me that there's not one by default, because having one by default will then tell people that the icon goes here. You registered in the V6 manifest right here. And if you look at the icon, you can see the size of it is 90 by 90 pixel, which is the exact size we want. That's the most optimal size for these icons. And so then you teach people about that. So of course you want to change it to something else, but now they know that, hey, icon is a thing and the size is 90 by 90. So it solves like several different best practice problems here. If we look at the V6 manifest here that I'm on, we can see it. There is no dependencies here, the outdated. So it's like kind of cleaned up. I don't have to make any cleaning in here. And the package class itself is nice and tight and does not have all those comments and regions and all this sort of stuff, like super tight, right? So that's about it. By the way, James, I can't see the comments today because I ran out of batteries on the iPad and I forgot to plug it in. So if there's any questions coming in, just let me know, okay?
Okay, will do.
Thank you. And okay, so let's add a command. And this time I'm going to go down here and I'm going to add a command. See, there's one called modern and there's one called VS SDK helper. Let's do modern first. So modern is basically doing what I used to when I cleaned up the regular ones, which is basically, you see here, that is the same as we had before. But not all those comments, and tidy, clean, reduction in concepts here. It's not a singleton as the old one was. It's not like, it doesn't have all sorts of members and properties and all sorts of stuff that we don't care about. It just has two methods and that's all. So much cleaner. And notice how it puts it into the command. It creates a folder called commands. The old one did not, the original one does not do that. So this one kind of sets you up for a folder structure that, at least I think, is the more accurate one. And the VS command table, see, now it imports the known monikers and it uses those down here. So there is no PNG that's added. There's no bitmaps registered anywhere. Look how clean and short this is, right? And so that's about it. So that's one way of doing that. Let's do another V6 project. And this time, I'm going to do the other type which was I'm going to add a command again, but this time I'm going to add the command for VS SDK helpers, because that leads us to segue into what that means. And we're going to call it just command 1 here again. Now check this out. So this is very similar to what we saw before in our command class. But instead of 2 methods, it's just 1 method. And by default, it's a task. It returns a task. So I'm async by default here. So I no longer have to figure out, well, how do I switch to the main thread, or how do I use the thread helper joinable task factory to run something that's asynchronously from an async method, or I want to just fire and forget. How should I use configure await false? That goes away, because we're just async all the way by default. And so how did that happen? Well, it's because our command now inherits from a base command. And that base command does not exist in the Visual Studio SDK. So if we look at we don't actually have a direct reference to the Visual Studio SDK. Instead, we have a reference to Visual Studio SDK helpers. Now, it has the reference to the Visual Studio SDK, so we still have the exact same SDK behind us here. But we get these helpers that kind of sit on top, if that makes sense, and give us base classes and other things. So what can we use that for, you ask? Well, let's take a look at what that NuGet package is. So it's right here. You can try it out now if you want to. Hit F5. So this is also linked in the description below. This NuGet package down in the YouTube description. And you can see there's a source link, so go and check it out on the GitHubs, which we have right here. And you can see here, there's a whole bunch of text about what it's for, how we use it, what its purpose really is, right? And so we're going to get back to that. So, but it allows us to take away some of the pain and hide that in best practice implementations, so we don't have to worry about that. And so let's just do some dummy coding here in my command. Let's do something in our command here. Let's say that what do I want to do when someone clicks the command? Well, let's check out the VS capital, okay, dot. So VS is the sort of the root object of those helpers of that NuGet package. And you can think of it as, if you know Visual Basic, you may have heard of this thing called the my keyword, my. And it's kind of a place where common functionality hangs off of. And so it's really good for discoverability. And so I can come in here and say, hey, I want to vs.notifications dot, and say, okay, I can get the activity log is listed here, or the task status center, right? And those are, again, all of this is async, right? So all of this is async. The way we request the services, all async, best practice. But then there's status bar. Okay, so what is status bar? Dot. And look, here I got a status bar implementation. All async, like set text async, and my text. And so I can await this. Oh, if I can spell await, I can do that. I'm override, so this needs to be async, right? Boom. So I can now kind of just fire and forget, set my status bar text super easily. I don't have to worry about, well, should I use the DTE to get to the status bar? Is that then best practice? Or should I get the service IVS status bar and use those kind of old school methods? And so this kind of takes that away and say, if you can find it on the VS root object, then that is like your shortcut, and it's like there's a certain confidence that whatever underlying API is being used by those wrappers and those whatever classes are in there, those are probably the right ones, like from a best practice perspective and so on. So that's the idea. And so that also allows us to like hide implementation details. So when new APIs come out that allows us to do things differently in new versions of Visual Studio, those underlying APIs we can now do that code split in that NuGet package, such that you don't have to worry about it. We don't break the contract. This is going to be the way you set the status bar text forever, regardless of whether or not the underlying Visual Studio SDK official API changes or not, right? Because we can handle those differences for you, basically, in that NuGet package. And how exactly do we do that? Well, because the NuGet package is versioned so it matches with Visual Studio. So you'll see here there's two. There's two versions right now. There's one for version 15 and one for version 16. So 16.0, that's Visual Studio 2019, right? So if your extension targets Visual Studio 2017 and newer, you would go 15, and then you would take that package. But the APIs are the same. It's only when there's APIs that don't exist in version 15. For instance, the Task Status Center does not exist in 15. Well, I can't fake that, right? So that API simply ain't there. You can't say, get me the Task Status Center using this NuGet package version 15. But you can version 16. Right. So whatever is in version 15 for the status bar, for instance, you know that will work across all versions because the underlying implementation changes with whatever we're shooting for. So there might be the implementation for status bar between 15.0 and 16.0 of the NuGet packages might be completely different, right? But the contract is not. So that's kind of cool. What else can we figure out here? VS dot. Well, I can say events dot, and then I get all these DT events. It kind of just wraps the DT events, but I don't know if you remember, if you ever used DT events, you can't just use them as this. I can actually go here and use these just like this, and that will totally work. For DTE events, that would not be the case because you need to have a local variable with the solution events class, which is kind of stupid. And no one knows this unless you know it. And so it takes away that pain, right? So that's what this is about. It's about streamlining things, make things easy to understand, and make you more productive ultimately. And then it just kind of does nice thing. If you want to do something with the debugger, right now we just have services, but it lets you very easily discover the services. So, okay, give me the debugger async. Okay, so var debugger equals this, right? Wait, here we go. So now I get the debugger, and you can start using that super easily. So instead of figuring out, should I use what service provider should I get? Do I need to pass around like a iService provider instance, such that when I get to where I need my implementation, I can like call its get service async method? Don't have to worry about that. That's all handled, and so we can just go straight to get the service we want by using the VS root object. And so a lot of these have services hanging off of them that makes that easy to discover. But some of them also have more, and the idea is that we want to add more meat to these things. But if we take something like solution, for instance, it will have something about get the active project async, and that returns us a project. Okay, so I can say var project, well, if I can spell it, equals get me the current active project. Okay, so project dot, here's another thing that we get. If I can find it. Do we even have that? Project dot is kind. Here we go. Extension methods. So is kind. I get extension methods that are hanging off of or get directory. gives me the directory of the project here, which is super nice, right? So, and very hard to do. It's actually remarkably hard to get to figure that out. I'm still working on getting Sourcelink working here, but oh no, we're here. So, for instance, just to figure out that, like, what is the directory of which the project lives in, the CS proj file or whatever proj file it is. Well, that depends on what type of proj file it is. If it's a C++ project or whatever it is, and some of them will throw exceptions. And so figuring out how to query for that is actually really hard. So it's kind of silly. So here's what it looks like, how to do it. And so I got Sourcelink working. That's fantastic. Nice. Okay. So anyway, that's what I mean about having all those convenient helper methods that we've been using for years and copying between projects and so on. So keep them in a single spot, right? Here, convert a project to a solution folder, because a solution folder shows up as a project. So you have to cast it to a solution folder. If you don't know, you don't know, right? Add files to the project, so on, and much more to come. So there's a bunch of extension methods. Here's one. Let's say we throw an exception. Right, so here I have an exception. This is let's pretend I'm catching it in a try catch block, right? And what do I want to do with an exception? Well, I want to log it. Log async. Boom. Again, everything is async here, right? The things that are not async are in places where it doesn't make any sense. So there's still places where there's no, but where it doesn't make any sense. But for most cases, everything is async. So why don't I log async? And that logs it to the output window to a new window pane called extensions. So that's something I use. I like to notify people of exactly what's the problem, so that when they send me a bug report, they can give me like the stack trace. And so now it's simply just a ex dot. I don't have to like dot log async on my exception, right? I don't have to like figure out how to work with the output window providers and so on, and create new window panes and all that. No, it's just a simple extension method on an exception. That's it. And so yeah, we can save this. So here's what it looks like. Got all the files, extension methods. We got some tools options. Oh yeah, I want to show tools options. That's another one that's often very hard to do. How do you add tools options, right? Yeah, I want to show that. Then we got some services. These are kind of what you've seen so far. Here's the VS root object. So we can get services. It just makes things easier. Oh yeah, so let's do options. So I'm going to add options here, and I'm going to, because we have extensions, templates for that. So I'm going to call it general options, right? General. Boom, here we go. So now I got this one C# file here called general. And it tells me here's an option. Here's how to do that. It gives me something here that I'm not sure what it is, but it tells me that it's used for registering the option. And I should use these here to do that on my package class. So now I'm going to just take these two lines that it told me to take and copy in on top of my package class like that. And so now, if I run this, let's see. This is where the Jeopardy music would be perfect. Wow, it's slow today. It's working hard on the with the browser, with having the StreamYard Studio open. Same old story.
I've been trying to figure out how to put music and stuff in it. So it's one day I'll figure out how to do that.
Oh, you know what? You know what happened? Oh, I did a reset of the experimental instance before the show starts, so it would be right and ready. But then it has to like recreate the hive the first time you run it and stuff. Okay, let's go to tools options. So let's just see what it said here. So basically, it puts a general page under the main name of my options. So we should have my options right here, and there's general. Boom. Oh, did not load correct. Oh, because I was doing all sorts of other things. That's too bad. So anyway, super easy way to add these things, right? It's like built in. So you both have the templates and you have the underlying base classes here in the Visual Studio helpers, like the base option models and base option pages, so that you don't have to do all this, figure out this stuff out on your own. So that's the idea. New templates, sort of a different take on an object model that is kind of the same, but has some wrappers and has some convenience methods, extension methods, and so on, to ease our lives. And so my thinking was that this would be something that would evolve over time. Right? We would figure out like how to add all the methods we needed, find the right wrappers. Whenever there's an anti-pattern that we would discover, we would bring that in. So one of the anti-patterns is, for instance, that you have a reference to your options page, your dialog page on your package class itself, like a static, so you can access it from elsewhere. That's a super anti-pattern. And so the option I just showed you actually gets around that, in that we can now call our our settings either asynchronously or synchronously, without going through the dialog page. We can just go straight to the object model, and so that's a much cleaner interface, and it's just fantastic. So that's the idea. Okay. So what do people think? Is this crazy? I know some people have done this before. There are other helper libraries out there. I think Jan. So Jan has one here. He actually mentions that. Let me just click. Here we go. Yeah, I hope that's not the purpose, is to, if you already have some code out there, to make other things obsolete. It's more like to say, can we come together as a community to do the right thing? And I'm going to be code reviewing all this sort of stuff, but I can also get some of the engineers from the Visual Studio team to take a look as well when they have time. So they won't have that much time, but the hope is that we can maintain a very high quality on this. So James, do we have anyone like commented on this? Like said, that's a good idea, or that's stupid, or?
Matt was loving it, head spinning, super loved it. Everyone else seems to be digging out. Although Jan was saying that he has something called Luminous Code NuGet. Is it?
Yes.
Similar, different?
It's similar in that it has and Jan, correct me if I'm wrong. It's a library that he uses where he puts his reusable code for his various different extensions. And it's available. It's probably on, or it is on NuGet, so everyone else can use it. And there are others out there. And so I don't think there's anything wrong with all of them. I haven't actually looked at all of them at all. I just know that some of them are out there. And they're usually used by the same people that invent them, and that's kind of the limits of it. Like, it's not widely used. So I think if we come up with something that has a broad appeal, that maybe has an initial design or initial goal or purpose that is kind of broad, kind of what I was mentioning in the beginning, and then we marry that up with like some project templates, then I think that might be the winning combination. Stephen also likes it. Okay, so we got some people here that likes it. That's good.
I like it. I'm into it. I think that if there's anything out there that can help make building extensions easier, or just give you access to all that goodness from the start, is going to make it a more enjoyable experience, I think. Oh, Andrew loves Sourcelink. I love Sourcelink too.
Yeah. I finally got it working, but for some reason it didn't pick up the XML comments, and I've spent time putting all those comments in the source code, and it didn't show up, if you can believe it. So I don't know what's up with that, to be honest. That's very weird. But I've never done Sourcelink before, and yeah. So these are all .NET SDK projects, by the way. So they're kind of nice and clean. They're pretty. They do target the right framework, right? So the 15 targets .NET 4.6, and the 16 version 4.7.2. And the cool thing about the shared project is that there's only one difference between the two right now, and that is that in the 16 version, for the notifications, it asks the task data center. So I made it a partial class so I can make this differentiation. So that's the simplicity of the mechanics of this. It's actually really, really simple to do this. It's just about doing it right and get the code reviews and all that sort of stuff. Why does it show my XML comments in the project? That's just weird. Anyway. So I think there's a lot of positive sides to this. I just want to be completely transparent. There's also negatives to this, right? It is not. It's not all positive necessarily. I think the positives are among the things that I mentioned, and I did write it down somewhere. Where is it? Here. Okay. Too much boilerplate is needed to do simple things. I think we can get around that easily. Or I think I just demoed how we got around that. It's difficult to find what services and components to use. I think we kind of got around that too with the VS root object. So just go to VS dot and like dot your way through as a way of discovering. Best practices that can change with each version of VS. I can't keep up. That's right. So what is the best practice for doing anything anymore? It's hard to know. And so by using this library, the best practice is kind of in the implementation already. We have new APIs. We've wrapped them so they look better. Some of them, like the status bar. Status bar is the only one we have so far, but it's a much kind of cleaner .NET-y looking API. The whole API not being async in the old is kind of problematic, and so now we're just async by default. And then this is another thing, right? Only Microsoft can actually update the official VS SDK API today. And so this is a way that we can make progress toward that. We can make our world better as extension developers by contributing to this and move it along as we need to. And then of course the breaking changes. Well, we have some mechanisms that we can hide those implementation differences so that you as an end user, not as an end user, but as an extension developer, do not have to worry about that. So those are the good things. So what are the bad things? Well, I think some of the bad things is we're hiding some things away, right? So we have to be careful that the analyzers that we do have in the Visual Studio SDK, the Roslyn analyzers, that they still apply to the whatever is in the helper library, because those analyzers know about the specific types inside the Visual Studio SDK. But if we wrap those types so that they're not exposed directly to the extension author, then those analyzers won't run on the extension author's own code, right? They only run on the helper library itself. And so we have to be careful there that we don't actually make things worse. So far we're good, but you can imagine down the road something we have to like be vigilant and careful about as we go along. What other
I got a good question here from Matt. Actually says, sounds great for new projects, but have you thought about existing projects and can they migrate to this down the line? Like, what does that look like?
Yes, you can. And I was actually thinking of doing that next week, like taking an actual extension and migrate that, because the good thing.
SVG extension, and we can add new features to it.
Maybe I have it here. What would it be called? SVG viewer is right.
It
Let's just do it. Let's just. I've never tried it, so let's just try it. So it's actually quite easy because, well, maybe I should try it first. Oh, this used the old stuff. Okay. Anyway, let's just go ahead and get this done. So so I don't know if you remember my old version of the SDK was basically a meta package that came out before the official meta package came out. It was a proof of concept. So we're going to uninstall this, and we're going to uninstall the resourcer, which is also now included in the official SDK. So we don't need any of those. Uninstall these, and then we're going to grab Visual Studio Helper. And what does this extension support? It supports Visual Studio. Oh, 14. Snap. I don't have 14, so let's just drop 14 for the sake of this. SDK helpers. Okay, so let's just do 15. So that's the first time I try the 15 version. And that brings in the whole SDK. So that should be good.
So it has like all those dependencies underneath it, basically, that right. You would need. Okay.
So I'm putting that to 15. Let's just pretend it was 15, right? So it doesn't seem like I'm dropping support here. It should just build now. If it built before, maybe I should have tried to see if it built before, but this should just build now. There should be no difference. Yep, rebuild all succeeded. Okay, so that's step number one. So what do we have? Maybe this was a super bad example because I don't actually have anything in here that it uses. Am I getting a service? I got a creation listener.
It's a seamless upgrade.
So this one was easy. Oh, here's one, like content type, right? So what is the content type of so HTMLX? What is that, right? Well, what if I go in here and I say VS? Let's see if it has a VS one. VS dot editor content types. Should have content type somewhere. Oh, where did I put those? So this was a super bad example, actually.
I think I found it. It's in shared services editors. Editor. Content. I'm looking at the code. It should be there. It should be in visualstudio.helpers.editor. Oh, it's not static though.
Oh. Here we go.
And they're constant, so that should work. Yeah.
Yeah, right. So
there we go.
Boom, and it says HTMLX. Right, so it has like some nice features here. Okay, so that was a super bad example.
Should I add? Should I do a pull request right now for SVG?
Well, SVG is not a content type in here. I think I added the content type for this.
There is XML.
Anyway, yeah, no, it should be extensibility margin. Just thinking, what is a code cleanup on save? We got, what do we have here? We have some commands, but those are. Let's just do this font sizer. That might be a good one. We got some commands. Here, references. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Let's do that. So, yeah, I was thinking next time we do one full of this, like maybe a more complex. All right, let's see here. Where are you? And this one is 16 only. Okay, So package. So far, so good. Then we have our commands. So we have a command base. What does that do? So here I have a base class. Oh man. Well, that's kind of annoying. So that's a bad example as well. Yeah, I'm just gonna stop now. I need to find a better example where I can actually go through and use way more of these different types, because otherwise it's kind of just, I have a lot of little extensions that does like a simple little thing. So I need to come up with a better example. Tweaks, yes, Jan, that might be a really good example because it has a lot of things in it, has a lot of commands, and so that might be a good extension as well to kind of test whether or not it's good enough, right? Because it has like a bunch of different things. Yes, and also it says, will you be taking pull requests for this? Absolutely. That's the whole point. The whole point of this is I should probably move it to a different org. Like I don't like necessarily that it has my name on it because that's yeah, maybe I should do that. But
you could do like there's like a thing. It's like Cake has like a Cake contributors thing or whatever. I think like VS Code has one of those too. Like you could do a VS extension community.
I usually do the Liga Shark. It's usually the org I use.
But see, if you imagine you had an org of extension like heroes in the community, right?
Oh,
like Jan, right?
Yeah, right.
That's like, hey, we want to form this group, this working group, if you will, of making VS extensions better from the community perspective with this community project. Wow, it's like I run a .NET community team over here.
That's James. That's not a bad idea.
I know, it's a pretty good idea. It's pretty decent idea.
It should be for all viewers of this show are welcome, and we work on things together. Wow.
You could do pull request reviews. You could do this. You could do, you know what I mean? And you could have people on to talk about the features they're adding and interview them. Be like, yeah, what about this feature? Blah blah. Right?
Yeah, right. That's not a bad idea. I like it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and then that way you can end up having, and that's the idea. I like it too because imagine a world where conference season's back up, Mads is on tour. You can have some admins that also have the ability to have access to the CI to push things through, get it all up there. Yeah.
So Andrew is asking a very good question. Like, what would you recommend for those looking to contribute to this, to have a feature wish list? So that's a really good question. So I think what we should do, because the best practices is like super paramount here. And so I think what we should do is that we should start every contribution with an issue on the issue tracker right here on the repo. And I say that because as I went through some of my code and looked for, well, what are some of the helper classes and stuff that I use all the time, and what are the things that I find annoying that I want to simplify or whatever. I kind of started with that. And quickly I realized that some of it was like very specific actually to some of my implementations, and some had variations between the different implementations. So those were not like as generic as I thought. And so I think if we can do a discussion about it first, and if you have anywhere in your code that you can recognize, like, hey, I'm doing this type of method all the time, it annoys me. It should be generalized, right, in a NuGet package. Put it in here. Let's talk about it. It's like, oh, actually, there's already a utility under the VS Shell service that does that for you, for instance. There's no reason for us to duplicate that. Then we can have those type of conversations. And I think when we do that and we kind of come up with an idea and people contribute like, some links to their code implementations or whatever, then we just have a PR come in and then that's it. And then we can iterate on it as well on the code. But I think we probably need the issue first as sort of the launch pad for each feature. And I haven't put anything in here, like a wish list of things. But that's a really good idea. I should look in and see. And I encourage everyone watching this to do the same. Like if there's something that you find so annoying, it doesn't have to be like a specific API. Like, oh, it would be great if if that API had an easier interface or something like that. It could also just be, hey, I'm annoyed by, I think the concept of this type of extension is too hard to write, so it doesn't have to be code specifically. It can be something that can be solved by a template, or it can be solved by other things than a NuGet package, right? But let's see that here, because we need to understand the problems before we can figure out what the best solution is. And for a lot of things, the best solution might be to add a pull request here. But for some, as I said, it could be a new template for something, or something completely different, right? Yeah, so since it was very different, it was not so much coding, it was more like showing, show and tell. But at least I got some comment here that some people, the Australians, Stephen and Jan seems to like it. So I don't know. It's popular among the Australians.
You could almost think of it as a community toolkit.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like we just, the community and the Xamarin team came together just to the Xamarin community toolkit. It was the same thing. It was like, hey, what are all of your, commands, and what are all of your, converters, and what are your controls? We were releasing a bunch of our own NuGet packages, standardized, right? Documentation, put it in. They have the, UWP community toolkit. There's all sorts of toolkits, all sorts of community toolkits. I love the idea of pairing it together and then, doing stuff like that. So,
yeah, and then hopefully we can we lift together, right? We all lift each other up that way. I kind of like that. So I just posted a link to this very thing I'm showing on the screen. So I see already 4 of you have been voting. I know that there's a lot more viewers seeing this. There's more than 4. So please click that link. And if you're on YouTube and you watch this after the fact, the link is in the description below. Vote for this. All you have to do to vote is just sign in with your Microsoft account to the developer community website, and then you can upvote it by click that button right here. This is for the templates. This is to clean it up. So it's already spec'd out and everything is ready to go. We just need to give the team some signal that this is something that we are passionate about. Okay, that's all we do with the voting here. Is to it's like a strong signal. The more votes we have, the more likely it is that they will do it sooner rather than later. They'll do it eventually for sure, but this might change their priorities just a little bit. Pro tip, exactly. I found I have a sound machine, and I need to find like a good pro tip sound. Maybe this one. That was a little too long. Here's a light.
A little too loud.
It was too loud too? Okay, what about this one? Ding, tip, pro tip.
One more time. See, put it on the screen at the same time.
Nice.
That's better. That's better. That is shorter. It's shorter in Sweden.
Yeah. Or if it's like a really good idea, then this. Ka-ching.
All right, one more time.
Oh, you're typing fast.
Yeah.
Okay, we're losing viewers by the second here. So
no one likes our shenanigans. Oh no.
Okay, cool. I think that's it. That's it for me. I'm so happy that you don't hate the idea. So let's move forward with this. Let's see what we can take it, and maybe let these Fridays be kind of where we follow up and keep doing this. And remember, there's no idea that's too lame. There's no idea that's like, oh, I don't know enough. I feel scared about like putting my ignorance on display, or whatever fear you might have from participating here in opening these issues. An issue is not an issue. It's just an idea. And the more ideas we have, the more problems we can define, the more solutions that help everybody we can come up with. So please, let's just all go there and have fun. Cool. Thank you, James.
Thank you. I've been having fun putting up a bunch of banners. Sounds good. And I've been having the subscribe one just go nonstop. So make sure you subscribe on the YouTubes.
Yep. Make sure to subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. More good things are coming. Cool. Well, have a great weekend, everybody. And for the Australians, it's a Saturday morning, I believe. So you're already in the weekend. So Hope to see you again next Friday, and let's convert an extension to use the new stuff then. Take care.